Maybe if I went to the right one, that would be the correct choice. Good morning, bedbreads and sleepyheads, and welcome to Book Club, where we're talking books once a month. My God, I feel like my model's being a little funky today for some reason. But good morning, everyone, and hello, Pepthread, and hello, Flossie. Congratulations on first. Man, why does my character look like their eyes are like this? I'm not doing anything extra. Weird. I don't know what's happening with my model at the moment. Well, I'm just gonna stare, looking incredibly tired. My God. Has anyone else decided that sleep is beyond them? How are you, Flossie? Hope that you're doing well. And same with you, Pepthread, of course. Heidi ho. I actually finished the book a day before book club, so I finished it yesterday, and that was a good time. Oh yeah, and Flossie, you wrote the review that I haven't seen yet, so we're gonna be reading that too at some point. I don't know where. This is where I need to look. Right here. This is relatively close to staring at the audience, I think. So this is where we're gonna be. This is our location. This is me staring directly at you. Feel it. Sorry, I'm in an odd mood today. Excuse me. But yeah, so we're gonna talk about the Midwich Cuckoos. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I kept reading it as like the Midwick for like a while, even though it's a ch. So I was like, is it supposed to be this? Okay, day off. In the countryside today, the weather is cooling. Hell yeah, Flossie. It is 30 degrees here, so it is not cooling here. And it's rained for like 2 days, so it is a humid 30. It is a walking through watered air 30. It's terrible. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the Midwich Cuckoos today. My God, I'm going to have a hard time with that one. I'm going to have me attempting my best to try and say the name of the book. You know what? The Cuckoos. We're calling them the Cuckoos now. I have spoken. Just put the name. Ugh. Oh my God, why today? Ugh. Just put the word between the two. Just put the and the Cuckoos. Just put Midwich. I guess I'll start by saying I did like this book a fair bit. I enjoyed the extremely slow burn of it. That book is slow burn. Oh my goodness, that's such a slow burn, you wonder if the actual stove is on. But in like a good way, which is the weird part. And how to say? Man, I don't have any like notes. I was slowly writing like my thoughts on what might happen in the book as I was going. Like, oh, is this happening because of this? Is this happening because of this? Oh, is this going to happen? Oh, is this going to happen? And like some of it I had right. Some of it I was like semi-close. Some of it I wasn't very close. Because just for context, I'm working with this book only with the knowledge that I have of its reference in The Simpsons. That's all I have to go on. I have the movie adaptation of the kids with the glowing eyes staring at the parents and going, "We know all your secrets." And then they try to attack the kids, and then all their eyes start to glow, and all the adults start fighting each other and attacking themselves. Which is, like, obviously done with comedic effect. Like, one guy's hitting himself with his own club, and one guy doesn't have anybody near him to like strike, so he starts strangling himself, and he's just going ah ah ah. And at the very end, a guy takes a pitchfork, turns it around on himself, and just as he's about to put it into his gut, it cuts over to the kids watch it, like to the actual like Simpsons cast kids watching it. So like that's all I had to go on. So, like, I had some prejudice, or not some prejudice, I had some biases and some expectations in the book, which were not completely met, but, like, they were met in other ways that I enjoyed. I will say, though, before going further, Zellaby, I think his name is Gordon Zellaby? Or Zelaby? Zalaby? Something along those lines. Okay, well, that Zalaby apparently was the closest one. If you cut out, like, half of his Tolkien-esque way of talking, you would cut out, like, 30 pages of that book. Change my mind. You can't. Anyone who's read this book knows that what I just said is the absolute truth. That man is just the writer's... Oh, speaking of which, what's the name of the writer of this book again? Gosh dang it. Gosh dang it, Will. You're supposed to know this. John Wyndham. Like... I swear that Gordon Zellaby is just John Wyndham's like, and now I'm going to flex my Shakespearean side. This is going to be my ramble character, and my God, does he take advantage of that. That dude talks. That's it. Like, there are dudes who do, there are dudes who do not, and then there are dudes who talk, and that dude fucking talks. Sorry, heckin' talks. I'm trying to reduce my swearing a little bit lately. Don't get me wrong, his exposition is actually very enjoyable to read, but my God, there were a couple times where I'm like, yep. Oh, he's still going, eh? Oh, this is 3 paragraphs, and all of them are him talking. Oh, boy. Is it not by the spider that the web is woven? When we look upon webs, do we not think of the vast circumstances of seemingly insignificant happenings all tangled together into such a thing? But who, do we ask, we do not ask what the web reveals, but who is the spider that creates the web? And you're just like, that chunk did not have to be there. I mean, granted, I just made that up on the spot, but like, that's kind of how he talks to some degree. Where you're just like, yeah, I'm still listening. I'm crapping on this character a lot. He was a very good character, though. You know. Spoilers, R.I.P. Gordon Zellaby. But we'll get to that. We'll do like a tiny little, like, how to say it, like, intro summary of him. I love his character so much. I do too. I think he's one of the better characters in the book, Flossie. But he also talks a lot. Like, I very much enjoyed his character, but he talks a lot. Like, there's a point in the book where the main character... Oh, what is his name again? What is the main character's name again? Richard? I think the main character's name is Richard. And he kind of says to Gordon at one point, like, don't, essentially, like, to paraphrase, it's like, don't take any offense to this, but I have a hard time figuring out where your rambles end and your sense begins. And I'm like, fucking preach, or sorry, heckin' reach, Richard. I saw a review that said, R.I.P. Gordon Zellaby, you would have loved Twitter. Richard does not actually get that much attention in the book either, which I kind of enjoy, because the book is kind of written as, like, the way that I kind of just, the way that I see the book is that it is a report on events written as a book. You know, like a journalist went out and got a bunch of information from everyone and then wrote a novel using all of his reports. And I think that that was a really good choice for the book. I think that they even address it at one point in the book where they're just like, if there are any things that you see from this point on that seem like they don't make a lot of sense in order, or that they don't seem to make a lot of sense as to how I would find out about them, know that this is written post hoc, and that I have gotten access to this information and put it into chronological order after the fact. And I'm like, I appreciate that you put this down. By writing this for me, I no longer have to worry about anything. You know? It's like, okay, this is now going to happen. Sweet. I can suspend my disbelief because you've given me the tools I need to suspend my disbelief. Pardon me, just need a quick sip of the tea. All right. I think I'm just going to put spoilers on right away because I'm just going to immediately go into the story itself. I'm going to try my best to summary it, but you can technically summarize it relatively quickly. A town is struck by what could only be described as an alien object, a UFO, which emits an effect around the town that anybody who steps into it immediately falls unconscious. For a day, this happens. I think they dub it the day out. I think is what it's called, if I'm remembering correctly. And not too long after this happens, when everybody regains consciousness and the military's kind of trying to figure stuff out, the town realizes that every able-bodied woman is pregnant. There is a minor hysteria, followed by an immense interweaving of community support for the women involved in this, who eventually give birth to, what was it? It was 31 boys and 30 girls. All very similar in look. So similar, in fact, that you can't distinguish most of them from the same gender. Like, you have a very hard time distinguishing the boys from the girls. And the striking thing about them is that they have semi-tanned skin, blonde hair, and golden eyes, making them immediately have like an alien look to them. Nevertheless, the community continues to take care of these kids, and they slowly start learning that the kids all want to stay in Midwich, which is where all of this is taking place. And they all want to stay in the sense that mothers are compelled to stay there by a force that they don't understand, but they know deep down is caused by the kids. Like, some of them try to leave and immediately they just come back. There's also indications of, like, revenge, where there is a woman who accidentally pokes her child with a pin as she's trying to put one of her, or one of their, because I don't remember if it's a guy or girl, diapers on. And when they find the woman, she is poking herself with the pin over and over again, with, like, tears in her eyes, but she's not stopping. So, like, somebody else has to, like, come in and kind of, like, snap her out of it, essentially. And there's just, like, this learned that the kids have kind of a supernatural ability of some sort. Eventually, a bunch of stresses cause the main character and his wife to leave for several years. I think it's like 7 or 8 years. I think it's 7 years. To Canada. And through just happenings, Richard, the main character, comes back to Midwich. And he shows up right as something major has happened. One of the townsfolk has died in a car accident. And he goes there with, is it Bernard? I think it's Bernard. Bernard is like this friend of Richard's who's like a military colonel. Very, he's like kind of prominent near the beginning of the book, but he's way more prominent at the end of the book, where he's just like, why don't you come with me to the funeral? And I want you to see if you notice anything. So they go. And one of the things that the main character, Richard, mentions afterwards is like, there is an intense tension here, despite everybody saying their farewells to this person. And you learn that what happened is the driver, the young man who died, took a corner too quickly and accidentally hit one of the kids with, like, his side mirror. And it's pretty much witnessed by several people. And no problem, Jam. Thank you so much for stopping by, and thank you for the lurk. It is witnessed by several people that even though he is trying to brake, all of a sudden his engine just roars and he just beelines into the church. And his car just basically explodes and he dies inside. And everyone is pretty confident that it was the kids. Like, the kids got hit. They reacted violently. They forced this young adult to put his foot on the gas and steer straight, because it's already shown in their younger years that they can do that. And that starts, like, a series of events, which, like, are, like, fairly, like, reasonable. You know what I mean? Like, there was a part in my head, too, where it's just like, well, Jesus, what do you do with when kids are capable of doing that? I mean, granted, the kids are technically, like, they look double their age. They're, like, supposed to be, I think, 8 years old. They look like they're in their late teen years, so, like, probably, like, 16. And they're, like, very intelligent. And they're capable of literally compelling people to do things, which is also pretty nutty. So a little bit later in the book, as they're kind of trying to figure out what needs to be done, an event happens. The brother of the guy who was killed dies. And how he dies is he gets a hold of, I think, his father's shotgun, shoots one of the children with a capital C, because in the book they always refer to them as children with a capital C. And as soon as he hits the kid, like, all of the other kids just start screaming. All the girls start to cry and all the boys start to scream, as if they seem to, like, share feelings and emotions and physical, how to say it, like physical experiences. And they force the boy to turn the shotgun around and pull the trigger, which he does. And at that point, the whole town is like, these kids are a menace. We need to do things with them. So they all go to the Sickle and Stone, which is like the tavern / bar in town, which you all know in any story. If a slightly angry crowd goes to a tavern in the evening, something's gonna happen. Because the minute that you start putting alcohol into people like that, liquid courage is a powerful thing. Mob, 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 mob. Exactly, Flossie. So at this point, Richard Bernard and Gordon are at the Kyle Manor, which is Gordon's home, with his wife. I don't remember her name anymore. Oh, Angela. And Angela are all there. And I am really shocked that I'm remembering these names. I think one of the good things is that the book, despite having a lot of names, there's only like 8 names that really matter. Like, I remember early on in the book being like, oh God, wait, you have a name for like everyone in town. I'm not going to remember this. And then at one point it's just like, no, you just got to remember Richard, Julia, Gordon, Bernard, Angela. Those are like the big ones for the most part. There's a couple of extra ones here and there, but like I think those are the big ones. But they're at the manor kind of talking it over, and the what did they call him again? Vicar? I don't remember his actual name anymore, but he's like the town priest. And he's basically comes in, Reverend, thank you. I couldn't find the word. Thank you, Flossie. The Reverend comes in and is basically like, I don't know what to do right now. Like, what am I supposed to tell them? I have spent 8 years reassuring the men and women, mostly the men of this town, to be reasonable and to breathe. And now the scale is starting to tip, and I don't know what to do. Like, I can only do so much. And as they're kind of talking about that, or more like, sorry, and as Gordon is talking about that, a lady shows up. I don't remember exactly what her name is anymore, but she's like, Reverend, you need to, come back to town right now. They formed a mob. They're heading towards the name of that place that I could never remember. The Grong? Or something like that. The Grang? I still don't actually know what it is. It seemed like it used to be a research center or something, and then it got turned into a school? Kind of? I just remember at one point it was described as a very ugly Victorian building. That's the only thing I know about this place. I could never fully, figure out what it was in my mind. But, oh, right, I'm kind of missing an important thing. I apologize. We also learn a research facility. Yeah, kinda, right? It's kind of like a large home that's also like a research location. A thing that I forgot to mention, when Richard comes back to town, he also learns that the children, for one reason or another, have started to, they can't go to school, really, because how do you explain that? So they brought the school to them. They turned this old research place into a school. And what they learn is that the kids really only need, 1 of each of the two kids, so one male and one female, to be there, because they find that one of them, if you teach one of them something, oh, right, we technically learn this before they leave. And Navek, thank you so much for grabbing the second. Congratulations. Before Richard leaves, you learn that this is a thing that they can do, where they can, if one of them learns something, everyone of that side of the gender will know it now. And because of that, the schooling, and thank you for the hydrate, by the way. And because of that, the schooling basically only needs like one guy, like one boy and girl there for the lessons, because all the rest of them will get it. And that means that you can have multiple classes happening at once, because all of them are taking in all that information. So if you have 10 classes, I don't know, like English, geography, science, the arts, etc. There is all of them will pick up on all of those lessons. And, so they also live at the school, I'm pretty sure. Flossie, can you remind me if that's the case? And thank you, Jam Jam. I'll get to it after I've gone through the story, because otherwise I'm going to forget where I am. Just like that. I think, yeah, they live at the research facility. And the mob is going there to basically burn down the research facility, and probably with the kids inside. It's probably the plan. And they end up being very damaged. Some just go between houses in the village. Yes, yes, fair. Thank you, Flossie. And it results in, like, many people being injured and, like, 6 people dying, because the kids defend themselves. And that's just causing even more tension now. I think this is also the time after this is when people can't leave the village anymore. Like, the kids are just, like, keeping them in town. And everyone's kind of like, why can't we leave? You'd think that they'd want us to leave after the violence, but they don't. And then a police chief showed. That's what it is. Sorry. Gosh dang it. I'm so bad at telling stories. When the Reverend is pulled out of the manor to go deal with the mob, Gordon calls the police and the ambulance, and ambulances from out of town, or from out of the side of the village. And they now have to talk to this police officer who they can't really tell anything to, because one, how do you explain that without sounding insane? And two, it's basically all classified information. And that's when there's that interesting moment too. Like, you get like a really I shouldn't do this right now, but it's on my mind at the moment. You get this really interesting moment where you realize when this book was written, because of what the officer or the police chief says, which is something along the lines of, you mean to tell us that you brought out police and ambulance on the word of one hysterical woman? And at first I was like, ugh, what a dirty way to say that. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, this was written in like the very late 50s. This is right where it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? From the perspective of the times. Like, it caught me off guard for a second and then was like, no, actually this makes a lot of sense, where people still thought that hysteria was an actual medical condition. don't know. It was just it was an interesting moment where I just like was both taken aback and all of a sudden was like, oh no, I'm reading the past right now. And I thought that was super interesting to just be like, oh, interesting. Okay, I'll keep going, but heck this nerd. Because I'm sure like even people who were reading it at the time were kind of like, man, everyone seems to be relatively reasonable in this book. And then this constable shows up. And it's just an absolute butt. But then finally they're like, why don't you come and talk to one of the kids? Because he just won't like let it go. Like he just doesn't understand, even though they keep trying to be like, the kids are special. And like, because they have their own school, immediately the constable assumes that they're of sub-intelligence. I don't want to use the word that he does use because I'm trying not to use that word as much anymore. But he uses a very particular word. And they're trying to be like, no, quite the opposite. They're very gifted. But this guy is very much in a very similar mind of like, he's like a hippie hater before the hippies have fully come into existence. You know what I mean? He's like, the red communists are going to show up and make kids stop being disciplined and make them feel out their feelings and and all of society is going to collapse because we're going to let kids run the adults. And so like even saying like, no, the kids are gifted. Immediately he presumes it's just like, oh, they're all just a bunch of like spoiled brats. So I'm going to deal with these spoiled brats as an authority. And so he goes to talk to one of the boys. And he gets answers from the boys. And the boys talk to him in a very adult manner. Like, very intelligent, but very, like, cold. Like, it's very apathetic. It's very matter-of-fact. And the constable basically just starts losing his composure and starts getting very mad at the kid. And I don't remember exactly how it transpired, but he ends up as a sobbing, broken man on the floor. Like, he is now dealing with quote-unquote hysteria to the point of where it cripples him. And he has to be, like, carried out by 2 officers. And when they ask the kid what happened, or the child what happened, the child basically says he didn't understand what fear was. So we let him know what true fear was. Don't worry, he'll be fine once his glands are rebalanced. And yeah, Flossie, that was a genuine moment where, like, even I, for a moment, was like, these kids need to die. I think these kids might need to die. I think that there might be a good argument to be made that maybe these kids should not be around anymore. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, there should be a slight moment of catharsis because the unreasonably, like, backwards thinking individual got his comeuppance, but also in the most horrifying way. Just like a kid stared at you and there's this, okay, just for context, a great example, I think, there's this spell in Dungeons and Dragons called Drag Through Hell. Or is it Pull Through Hell? And it's a spell where you cast it on someone and they disappear for 1 turn. And on the end of your next turn, they come back and they take like 10d10 psychic damage. Is it 10d10? It might be 66. They take a frick ton of psychic damage. And it's because you send them through the 9 levels of hell over the course of a few seconds. And just let them witness the horror of that. And I feel like that's basically what the child cast on the constable. He just sent the constable through hell for just a moment. And it was enough to just like... There's a great line that a friend once quoted from a show. I don't know what the show was, but his mind has finally snapped like a brittle twig. And that's kind of how I feel about that moment. Somebody cast drag through hell. Or, oh, it's hurl through hell. And then his mind snapped like a brittle twig. And this leads to probably the more interesting and also dry part of the book. Because Gordon constantly mentions that he's relatively on good terms with the kids, even though he doesn't really understand them. And doesn't really think that they're friends, but he feels like he's one of the closest things to friends that these kids have, should these children be able to have friends. Like, there's a great dialogue about the concept of, like, they're all one being. Like, it's technically two beings. I know Gordon mentions at one point that they are the Adam and Eve. And all of the two sides combined become Adam and Eve, just how they work. And they... how to say... they learn from the kids and, like, sorry, we learned from the kids a bunch of stuff. And it's really dry politics. Like, that was a part of the book where I was like, I know this needs to be said, but the children are talking more than Gordon and more dry. So it's like, oh, these 2 pages are rough. And then we learn from Bernard later that Midwich was not the only place that suffered a day out. There was somewhere in Mongolia, there was in Russia, there was in, I think, northern Canada. They believe there were other places, but they haven't been able to figure it out. And there's... that part gets a little iffy for me because there is a little bit of just like the savages and the Reds come into play there really hard. Like maybe the Reds is a little bit more fine, but just like the immense like primitive, just like, oh, the primitives dealt with it accordingly sort of idea. But you basically learn that in these places, a bunch of stuff happened. In the Russia location, they started realizing that the kids were more of a liability than an asset. So, without telling anybody in the town that that was happening, they nuked it. They just purged it off the planet. To hell with the parents, to hell with the people who live in that town. Bye-bye, children. And in some of the other places, what is it? I think both in Mongolia and in northern Canada, aka the Eskimos, quote unquote, they like either murdered the kids out of like bad spirits, or I think in Mongolia they murdered the children and their mothers. As like you're all demons sort of way. Like it just plays on that whole like just a reminder that we are the only civilized place in the world. The only place with true civilization is the West. Like it just had that feel to it, and I was like, ugh, I know that that's part of the era, but ugh. And you realize or you learn that the nuking of the Russian town happened on the same day of the riot, I believe. I think, or was it? Yeah, I think it was the riot. And there's the indication that like all the different areas where these kids work can communicate with each other to some degree. So the reason that they're keeping everybody, how to say it, like everybody hostage in the town is human shields. It's like, well, they might have done it. Like the Reds might have done it. The Savages, quote unquote, might have done it. But we're in Britain. The Brits wouldn't do this because they're too civilized. And there's a whole argument there about like how like the political system is simultaneously good at giving other people like how to say it, like law and justice, but also it slows the gears down of like how to deal with this threat. Because at the end of the day, everyone perceives these children as a threat. Eventually, and even like the children themselves are like, look, there's only really two ways to go about it. Either we are murdered by you, or at one point we dominate you, or at least that's what you think. Because of course we dominate you. We can stop an entire town from going and coming, you know? They at one point, there's a bomber that flies overhead and they force all of the crew to jump out. You know, it's just very like, there you go. You know, like we have a crazy amount of power. And Gordon ends up being like, look, let people leave the town. There's no reason for you to just like keep everybody locked in. It's ridiculous because most people are going to stay. And like you having 100 meat shields versus 50 meat shields is not going to change whether or not the military is going to nuke this place into oblivion. And the children see reason in this because Gordon is friends with them, quote unquote. But like it sounds like in exchange, he is bribing them with a jar of this candy. I don't remember what they're called anymore. So like he gets his wife to go out and like get like this candy for the kids. And then at the very end of the book, Gordon is like, well, it's my however much time day to go and watch movies with the kids. And they always seem to like that. So that's what we're going to do. So if you guys can help me put all my stuff into the car, we'll go, like, I'll be on my way, essentially. And I think Richard comes along, gets there, and basically is like, you know, don't worry about it too much. The kids love the movies. I've noticed that, like, even though, like, a lot of sensory stuff they can handle or they can share with each other, there's something about visual stuff that they want to experience on their own. So he goes out there to do it, and he's like, I have one favor to ask of you, Richard. My wife is not in a good state right now. She needs the company of someone. Please do that for me. Go and be her company so that she doesn't have to be alone in her, like, in the darkness of her mind right now. So Richard goes back, starts talking to Angela. They talk for a bit, and midway through their conversation, there is a huge eruption of noise outside, to the point of where it blows most of the windows off the room that they're in, and like almost throws them both out of their chairs. Like it's just this huge thing, and like there's kind of like this staggering, and Richard runs to the windows to look out, and he can see like this like plume of fire off in the distance, and he's kind of like, oh shit, what happened? And he looks around, and Angela's gone. And he goes to look for Angela, and he finds her in Gordon's study. And there's a paper beside her. And he picks it up, and he does this. It basically is like, I don't really have to read it anymore. I already know what this paper says. So he puts it down on the desk and goes to comfort Angela. And he catches the lines on the paper. Let me just read this really quickly. Doctor will tell you a matter of a few weeks or months at best. So no bitterness, my own love. As to this, we have lived so long in a garden that we have all but forgotten the commonplace of survival. It is said, Latin, I don't know how to say it, or quite sensibly too, but it is a more fundamental expression of the same sentiment to say, if you want to keep alive in the jungle, you must live as the jungle does. And that's the end of the book. So it's pretty clear that at the end of the book, at least my interpretation of it, which I presume is correct, is that they mention that when Gordon's loading up all of his stuff, it's a notable amount of stuff just to show a movie. And I think the implication is there was an explosive in there somewhere. And Gordon, knowing that he was probably on his deathbed, because it's mentioned a couple of times that like he's getting older and he seems like he's getting more tired, and whenever he's kind of alone with himself and he's being observed without him noticing that he's being observed, he seems to be like 10 years older than he already is. And yeah, I suspect that what happened was he was just like, the threat's inevitable. We need to deal with it. They trust me. I'm going to die soon. I'm going to take them with me. And thank you, Blue, for the contribution. And yeah, that's basically the Midwich Cuckoos. All right, I'm going to really quickly do those push-ups and those jumping jacks. I'll be back ASAP. Don't mind me just throwing stuff. And hello, Cobalt. Thank you also for the contribution. One moment. I have to do jumping jacks and push-ups. I don't even get to do the whole set. Navek abandoned the call, but abandoned Jam in their hour of need. Just lurking and listening because I didn't read the book. That's totally fine. I just gave an entire summary of the book. At this point, I'm just going to be blah, blah, blahing. I must go into lurk, as opposed to regular lurk. Lurk is when you lurk while you're lurking while lurking. Like, you're not even just lurking. You're idle at lurking. You're not actively lurking, you're passively lurking. You get it. I do get it, Blue. Alright, first, my character's gonna look really weird because it's not gonna know what to do with this, so we're gonna do jumping jacks and push-ups. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Passing by jail. Exactly. Do not collect $100. That's how it works. Lurking so hard that the tab is open, but you're wandering away from the PC. Yeah, exactly. You're doing a whole other level of lurk. All right, hold on. Let me really quickly do the push-ups. Yeah. And wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Woo! Yeah, so there's the summary of the book. I don't think it's a perfect book. It is a very good example of all action happens off screen. It is very, it's the book's version of going against the show don't tell. I don't think they do it poorly, though, which is something I do need to say. They do break the show don't tell book or rule by just telling you what happened. But they do it well, where you learn about things slowly, piece by piece, in like a good way. I don't know. It's weird. It's one of those things where it's just like, I wish that we had seen it, but in the context of the book, it's actually like a pretty good approach to it. So it like loses points, but like a fraction of points rather than whole points, because it's like, I would have preferred the other way, but you didn't do it badly. Also, yeah, like, I liked the... Where's my thing? Oh, yeah, that was the other thing. Seen it how, though, like, having the character Richard, like, witness it rather than being told about it. But again, they do it well because we get to see it through other people's eyes. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it. I just know that it's... Even though we get to see it through the eyes of other characters, it still felt like it's explained to us. There's gonna be a lot of today. Because I did finally get, or I did get a day. Hold on, let me just make sure. There we go. I did get a day to ponder stuff, but I still feel like I haven't had enough time to fully process the book, and I like want to like go back to parts and be like, how was this written again? But no, like overall, I think it was a good book. I like that, how to say, there's clearly a, because it's a real blend of first and third person. Yeah, and because of that, in some cases, just like, well, I get that I'm technically watching this through the eyes of a third person, but like, we've established semi-early in the book, what, like, probably like chapter 6, 7, that, everything from this point on has been written accounts. And I think that's probably skewing my brain a little bit, because it's just like, wow, I mean, we're not, the main character isn't learning or isn't experiencing this. He's learned this through people. So he's writing what other people have told him. And again, that's a silly way to do it now that I'm like kind of like reprocessing it. Not a silly way to do it. It's a silly way of me to think, because they are showing it. But just the preset rules of the book, I think, kind of put my brain into that state. I think one of the things is that I think because a lot of it comes from Gordon, and he is exposition meets theory crafting, that I think at certain points you're just like, okay, like most of this book is Gordon talking, and he doesn't show so much as tell, that I think just some of the parts of the book just in my head are just like, oh yeah, all of this is tell, not show. So I take back my statement. They do show. Just sometimes you lose it a little bit in just the walls of text of Gordon. Oh, excuse me. I accidentally inhaled my own spit. Hold on, sorry, I'm just doing a scan of the questions that I wrote to myself. I wish I had expanded on that thought, because I wrote it down. And welcome home, Jam Jam. Oh, what did I want to say? Oh, okay. Yeah, I wrote it down, and I wish I had written it down better. Like, there is definitely some classism happening. Because, like, Gordon is always shown as, like, this very intelligent, like, very educated and also rich guy. Same with, like, Bernard, right? Like, it takes a very long time for Bernard to, like, lose his composure in any way, because he is this upstanding military gentleman of good stock. And it just felt like, for some cases, like with like the men doing the rioting, there really was a feel of just like, Well, what do you expect from the simple, you know? They're superstitious and silly. They can't handle the fact that the children were not theirs, and at best they were tolerating them. Well, like that, it just had such an implication that, like, men can't view those that aren't of their blood as family. You know what I mean? It's just like they will always resent the children. Just like they'll probably always, sort of, to some degree, resent their wives for the situation at hand. And it's just like, brah. Brah. Are you telling me that a man who marries a woman who had kids from a previous marriage couldn't at one point see himself as their dad and them as their children, them as his children and he as their dad? Are you telling me that's not a thing that could happen? Get out of here. But I think that that is a thing that just, I mean, Lovecraft deals with that too, right? Where it's just like the strong-stocked aristocrat versus the simpleton backwater man. Also, ads are popping up. I'm so sorry. We're going to take a tiny little break because I was not paying attention to the fact that ads are coming up. We'll be back ASAP. BRB, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What in the 9 hex were we talking about? I don't remember anymore. Why didn't I write it down really quick before I stepped away? Lunity, thank you so much for the contribution. At this rate, I'll be doing an unreasonable amount of exercise probably by next stream. And thank you, Flossie. I appreciate that. I cannot remember what topic I was talking about at that moment. We talked about that. We talked about that. We talked about that. Oh, yeah. Like how books of this era really have still that rose-tinted view of aristocracy versus like the plebs. What's the word that I'm thinking of there? They still believe in a meritocracy. I mean, technically, people still think that we're in a meritocracy, but still. So there's very much just like, well, they must be intelligent. They're rich. And that was one thing that just, I don't know. Like I said, it gave me, Lovecraftian vibes, because Lovecraft loves that stuff. Like, just like the dying thrashes of the rich elite. Which, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. It also, like, I guess that there is definitely a way to look at that from, like, a very British perspective. Because, like, Britain definitely is just like, well, we used to own, like, 70% of the world. Our nobility must be doing something correctly. I'm sorry, Flossie. I'm being very critical right now. Sorry, I also gotta make sure. There we go. We're back in the right spot. So yeah, what I'm saying is that the book is like a time capsule, which I think is very fascinating to look at, of like old ways of thinking about things. Also, the servants of Gordon are never mentioned, but we know that he has servants. And that's all we know. It's kind of like casually mentioned once, and it's like, I know it's not important, but I'm curious. But from the book's perspective, but from just the story perspective of the book, I know B-classism is still very exists here. It's odd. Yeah, I think it's very ingrained in the culture, which is super fascinating. Just unfortunately, it's also a real kick in the teeth for anybody who isn't part of the, quote, upper crust. I like the fact, though, that the book has some ambiguousness when it comes to the kids. Because, like, the kids are flat out like, look, Bernard, we want you to go to your superiors and make these demands. I think they wanted, like, a transport plane and supplies somewhere. They didn't say where. They just want to be hidden. They want to go to a place where they can hide. It's basically a survival thing, right? Their motives are completely unknown to us. We don't know what's going on in the kids' heads, and a lot of the adults don't ask either, which really drove me up the wall. I'm like, why are you not asking them what their goals are? I guess the implication is that they have and they don't get anything in response. The kids don't engage with those questions. But it still was like, well, show me that they don't respond. You know? In this case, it's not even like, oh, we tried talking to them and they didn't get anywhere. There wasn't even like that. There was just like you can just guess that someone at one point, perhaps someone of good breeding, asked them such an intelligent question, and they They simply didn't get an answer. Sorry, I'm harping on the classism stuff too much. It's not really that important. It's just something that I noticed, and now I'm just like, I noticed that now, and now it's in my brain. They're in a class of their own with we can't. We don't explain to the lower intelligences. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the way that they use this kind of, not existential threat, but like this inignorable potential threat as a like, how do we approach this? How do we approach this thing that is now above us in the food chain? In the sense of that it doesn't necessarily want any of us to die, at least from what we can tell, but they are, for lack of a better word, superior to us as a species. Like, they just are. They're by all accounts, they're more intelligent. They can take in information far faster than any individual can. They're capable of, like, willpowering us into doing things against our own wills. Like it was only going to end in, we gotta deal with this, you know, like we gotta get rid of this. Which, like, I would love to read a book of a similar thought process, but from a different perspective. I wouldn't know how you would write it, because I wouldn't know how to approach that thought process, but I'd love to read another book of similarness that ponders the methods of cohabitation and how that would be approached. Should it be approached? Because, like, even the children in this book immediately presume segregation, right? Like, give us this thing so that we can leave and just go exist in a different place. What about that one book with the incest mutant kids? I think that they end up leaving in that one. What book are you talking about? Sounds like you want X-Men, but they're not. I guess kind of in a way. But it's if X-Men... Maybe I'm just being too rigid in the thought process. There's a book that I remember in school but don't remember the title. Okay, fair enough, Cobalt. I don't know. I'm curious about cohabitation because, like you said, X-Men, I guess, is like that to some degree, but, like, most of the X-Men story is about them not being accepted and constantly dealing with it. I mean, like, the newest animated series, as far as I'm aware, very much explores the idea of just, like, humans will never change and they'll never accept us. At least from Magneto's perspective. And then, like, kind of being proven semi-right on that. And it's like, well, what would happen in a world where it did? Even if it was small. Like, what if it was a situation where maybe, like, the rest of the world are just like, those kids are dangerous. But, like, the town and maybe, like, the nearby towns are just like, but we coexist just fine. There's no issues here. Like, they don't harm us. We don't harm them. Even though communication is difficult, we do coexist in a healthy, like, way. I don't know. I'm sure that already exists, and I'm just thinking too narrowly. I know who I am. That's why I shouldn't be the leader of book club, because I'm a very narrow-minded individual, unfortunately. But I still like reading books, so we're going to keep doing book club. But the children really let out that they continue to exist. They would kind of outgrow humanity due to the imbalance of intelligence abilities. So I wonder how that would work in that particular case. Fair enough, actually. Will found book club and then doesn't seek power. Will for prime minister. Oh my god, I would hate being prime minister. That sounds like so much work. Also, just casually proclaiming that I'm a narrow-minded individual and then being put into the position of having power over a country. Well, I might be a simpleton, but I see no reason for us not to give people government benefit. 8 years, Will sleeps not. Hold on, let me ponder for a second. Yeah, Flossie, I do get what you're saying with that, because if they do exceed us of essentially, like... Then we start interestingly kind of getting into, like, Flowers for Algernon to some degree. You know, where, like, that othering happens. Othering in the sense of just, like, you know, it's lonely at the top. There would eventually be, like, the separation between the two, because they just... It's not even that they can't coexist because... because they're incompatible. Just, like, one just is too advanced for the other. That stuff always comes to mind when I think about, like, alien races and stuff. You know, like, the idea of there being, like, some kind of, like, galactic government, and the only reason that we haven't been invited to it yet is because they're just, like, they still need time. They still need time. We can't do it to them. We would shatter their minds. For a second there, I thought you were going to say that I'm a simpleton, but I see no reason to kill people. Just the children, Cobalt. Don't worry. I mean, the important question is whether or not we can crossbreed with the mutants. I don't know if you could in this regard. Like, we're going under the presumption... If we're going into the presumption that the children become adults, which is already weird because they technically age twice as fast as humans do. So when they're 20, they're technically 10. So that's already where, like, a bunch of gray areas start. And 2, they experience knowledge and a lot of different things as a group. So, like, if you have any intimacy with one of them, you're technically having intimacy with all of that particular gender. Like, if you're dating one of the women, you're going to be you're technically with all the women. Because it does sound like they can switch who's in control of the vessel. I think it's mentioned at one point in the book. Another of Wyndham's novels kind of approaches the cohabitation between vast differences, which that was interesting. Do you know which book that was, out of curiosity, Flossie? I mean, the whole thing in X-Men, like, what just like, that's just what humanity did to the other humanids, or the hominids, blah, 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 blah. Why do war when we can smooch them instead? Oh my god, you're just thinking of Mass Effect at this point, Cobalt. Just go play Mass Effect again. You're driving me to drink my tea just out of shaking my head right now. I don't know. Yeah, like, they purposefully make the children not confusing, but, like, mysterious, because the story wouldn't be as good otherwise. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't have enough information. The chrysalids? Ooh, now you're making me think of XCOM, and the chrysalids were freaking scary. Hold on, let me do a Google. The Chrysalids novel. Can I get like the tiniest summary right now, Google? No, I don't want the whole plot. I don't want the whole plot. No. Literally no like super fast summary. No, not gonna give that to me. All right, whatever, fine. I don't care. I didn't want it anyway. That's the book I was talking about. Son of a gun. Cobalt immediately just like, that one. Well, crap. We come full circle. Well, now I gotta read that book at some point. Can't do it right away. We can't do two books from the same author in a row. Besides, there was one book that got mentioned to me recently, I believe by Flossie, about like memory, and that one fascinated me. So that might be the next one potentially. You stay out of this, Cobalt. You lost your privileges the moment that you brought up Mass Effect without saying Mass Effect. Hold on, but let me write it down on my phone really quickly so that we can... Should that be another book that I want to go down? Book options. Oh wait, why am I putting it on here? I can just write it in the Discord as a recommendation. Actually, Flossie, can you write that in the recommendations for me in Book Club? Please and thank you. Much appreciated, thank you. Just the name and the author, please, just so that I have it. I want to have that on my person so I can immediately be like, this thing. Oh yeah, we should do that. There. Okay. There was another topic I wanted to talk about. Like I said, it looks like Book Club is probably going to be between 1 and 2 hours roughly, and depending on how like either invested I got into the book or how much it like, also depending on when I finished it, because if I don't have a date summary, I'm somebody who needs like a few hours to just sit with my own thoughts and just process the book for a while. I have the same thing with movies, which always irritated some of my exes because we'd go to a movie and they'd want to talk about it and I would just be like dead quiet, just completely in my own head. And I just feel compelled to talk about it because I don't want to leave them in dead silence. But I also just want to sit and just think about the movie by myself. This is why I don't watch movies. Because I need time to think about things afterwards. And then everybody wants to talk about it. And I just want to think for a little while. So yeah, I got to make sure that I finish the book at least the day before. Probably 2 days before is the best. Is the best for that. I just can't remember what the other thing was that I wanted to mention. Wish I had written it down, but I didn't. Oh. There was an interesting thing with Gordon and like his representation of like the upper crust of like the intelligentsia, where he simultaneously understands that in the situation that they were in at the beginning, where all the women are pregnant, or in the village are pregnant, that like all of them are dealing with like immense mental weight, because a lot of them realize pretty early that they're basically host mothers to something, and they don't know what it is. It's like it would bring the same kind of discomfort if like the aliens from Alien were slow. You know what I mean? It's not just like this sudden burst out of the stomach thing, but if it was like you had them in you for a month and you could see them slowly growing in your stomach kind of idea, you know? Like it's that kind of it's that thought process where it's just like, of course that's going to take a toll on yourself. It's just like, why would you not want that gone? In a society at that period of time where I presume any thought process of like abortion was basically no. I mean, we're still kind of there, but let's not get into that fucking political rant. Pardon my language. So they're kind of trapped in this situation where they have to bring this thing to term, even though it's probably not theirs. And like they do a really good job in the book of connecting different types of people, because some of the village women are like, no, like, this is my child, like I'll die for this kid. And then a fair number of them are just like, I raised them like they're my child, I love them like they're my child, but I do understand that there's a difference. And then there's some that are like, if I could leave right now, I would, on the spot. And while they're being, while they're all still in like their trimesters, or in their different mesters, or whatever the heck the wording is there, I like that Gordon acknowledges that like none of the men can possibly understand or could tolerate what the women are going through at the moment. They do a really good job of that, where there's very much the idea of like, where he acknowledges just like, it doesn't matter how angry or upset or worried we as men are. And no problem at all, Cobalt, you have yourself a good lurk. It cannot compare to what the women are dealing with. And I was like, that's a pretty progressive way to think about things, like, or like, that's a very open-minded, that's the word I was looking for, sorry, that's a very open-minded way to think about things. It's just like, because it's very much the idea of just like, we can empathize, we can, we can imagine, we can support, but we can't experience. That's just how it is. While at the same time, Gordon occasionally like just doesn't quite tread on the, but like really closely treads on the, well, men are just smarter than women statement. Like he gets there once or twice in the book, very close. Like he doesn't quite cross that line, but his foot is covering the entire line. And he's just not on the other side of it. And I'm just like, Gordon, come on, dude. Don't you do it. Don't you take that extra little shimmy. I see what you're saying there. But again, very much a product of its time. I need to constantly remind myself of that. And I think that's a good thing. I think I mentioned already earlier in the stream that I do think that reading stuff of older content gives you an interesting glimpse into the past and how different we are now as like people. Really felt for the women in the book. Wish that there could have been said more from them. I agree. I very much agree, Flossie. They don't get a lot of screen time. That is the tell don't show. I think they do that a lot with the women. Where it's very much just like, the only show that I think one of the bigger shows that we got early on was when Angela is in that town hall meeting with all the women and tries to give them the pep talk, you know, just like, we're all in this together. We need to keep it in the village. And if we can keep it in the village, we can support each other. Those who are married will have the support they need. Not really mentioning the fact that one of the women who's married gets like almost immediately beaten by her husband when he finds out that she's pregnant. There's the part where two women are talking to each other, and the one, I think they're sisters, and the one is like so stoic but like breaks down and cries and like is like, I didn't think that I could have a child and I can, and like I can't express how much joy I feel over this. And then the other sister is just like, I'm also pregnant. And she's like, oh my god, by who? Like, oh no, sorry, like, oh my god, congratulations. And the younger sister's like, no, you don't understand, it's not his. And the response of her sister is to like get up and start walking away in like a look of like, just like, I can't believe you would do that. And then the chapter ends with her saying, no, you don't understand, it's no one's. And it's just that fascinating thing again, right? Where like everybody is affected by the beliefs of the day. You know, like her sister's almost abandons her because she thinks that she cheated on her husband with someone else. And yeah, exactly, Flossie. I mean, that was a really interesting situation where it turns out that the guy was found inconspicuously, like just a little bit outside of their house. And then it was like, that was already kind of a problem. But then she gets pregnant with everybody else, and immediately the husband's just like, you cheating bitch, and just, you know, lays hands on her, and it's just like, dude, what the frick? Chill. This is not a time for violence, you idiot. I don't know. I think what I'm saying is all the characters have like fascinating like feats and flaws. Like, I think Gordon overall is like a good character and is generally a good character and a good man. But he's still biased by like the day's norms and expectations of society. Which I think actually makes him a more compelling character because you're looking into that world from the perspective of an old man who's already like lived for quite a while. There's also an implication that Angela is like very young compared to him, which has a little bit of a yikes, but we're not going to go down that road. Just that came to mind where it mentions that it's just like, yeah, like Gordon's like getting close to like his end of years, whereas Angela still has like a fair bit of life left in her, and it's just like, is this like the difference between like a 70-year-old and a 30-year-old? Like, what kind of a time frame do we have right now? I don't think they ever mention the ages, but I don't know. Just something that I noticed. Oh, you're not registering my eyes. Interesting. Sorry, I'm just realizing that my model is not registering my eye direction. I'll figure that out later. I'll make a note. But yeah, I think the best thing that we can do now is to read a Flossie review, because we love a good Flossie review. So I think it's this one that I need to hit. And then it's this button. Ah! Flossie review time. Da 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 da. Okay, yes, that's the situation. Bespectacled. Yeah, I'm glad that I made these silly little glasses. All right, let me read this real quick. All right, let me see here. A 3.75 out of 5 stars. What would you do if you woke up and found out that you had paused while life proceeded? Bracket. And it wasn't just because you had taken a nap, end bracket. What then if you found your sleepy village life completely changed? A story of invasion taken from a different approach. No immediate war or battle with an unknown enemy. Wyndham explores what possible response there could be were we to find ourselves with unfamiliar company. And I loved it. Ethics, empathy, and all the other E's that make human society human are approached. It's a slowish build, but you certainly feel it. The concepts are explored. What it means to be an individual, what it could mean to not. I found myself always were always thought-provoking. I'm sorry, Flossie, that I'm butchering this so much. It would be nice to have had at least a couple of chapters from the women of the village point of view, but this has been written in the 50s, so I forgive him that. I am very biased, of course. I loved reading I'm very biased, so of course I loved reading the Midwich Cuckoos. Strangely, I still remember the story clearly enough from the first time I read it to have spoiled it in a way for myself. It was like watching next time trailers for episodes to come each time I closed the book. Regardless, I was so happy to be back in the village and once again marveled at Zellaby's character and his way with the children. John Wyndham has such a deliberate way of writing that I find I never tire of it. A review from Flossie. I did it. I fumbled it to all heck, but we got through it. Also realized that I was constantly on this one when I should have brought it up to this one. So that's embarrassing. Well, so be it. Poorly written review. No. I should have read it prior to so that I could have just immediately been ready for it. There we go. Oh, wait. And also despeckled or despectacled. Haha. But yeah, I think I'm pretty on point. I'm pretty much in the same boat as you, Flossie, where it's a very good book. I think it's written very well. The concepts are explored very well. Again, I very much agree with you that I'm sad that the women of the story did not get... I'm not hitting the button, Flossie. But know that the sound could be made right now. But I'm not going to do it. Because I'm nice. Just kidding. Oh, it's not gonna do it because I didn't hit the button. I'm embarrassed. Well, there's the end of it. Enjoy the end of the thing. And Lunity, thank you so much for taking third. Congratulations on third. Yeah, I think I'm basically in the same boat as you. Shut up. I messed up, okay? Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you. I wish that the women had more of a say. Really, there were only, what, like 2 or 3 women's that really got, like, a lot to talk. Like, Angela got a fair bit for the most part. Julia kind of disappears pretty quickly. I think it was her name was Julia. basically disappears pretty early, and then like Miss Lamb gets a little bit, and Mrs. Something Wood gets a little bit. But for the most part, there's not really that much. What do the women think in this book? Which, you know, like you said, it's written in the late 50s, so we just accept that situation as it is and we move on. And I do think that everything was written well. When they started talking about how the government was never going to deal with them in a time that would cause them to have any worry, it got a little bit dry for me, because it was very much like, you know, let me read you the treatise, and I'm just like, yeah. The politicians who would care would eventually just become greedy for power, and the ones that would want to do something radical would never do it because they couldn't, because it would destroy their ability to ever be back into politics. I mean, these are all really good points, but they're written so dry. They're written so dry. Excuse me. And yeah, I think that summarizes the book for the most part. I liked it. I think I'm in the same boat as you, Flossie. I think I'll give it a 3. I think a 3.5. I think that's where I am. I think I'm at a 3.5 out of 5. It was a fun book. I enjoyed it. It was genuinely a book that I early on had a lot of trouble reading it. Not for any real reason, just my ADHD made it really difficult. But like every time I picked it up, I would just like zoom through like 3 chapters and be like, wait, how many chapters did I read already? Holy heck. Because like it pulls you in, and like if any of the topics are even slightly fascinating to you, you're immediately like, I want to read more. Like, I was worried yesterday that I wasn't going to be able to get through it, because I was like, am I going to have, like, the mental capacity to, like, pull myself into reading this? And, like, my best friend was over for part of the day, and all this grand stuff. And then he left, and I had, like, 4 hours before stream? 3 hours before stream? And I, like, picked up the book and just, like, didn't put it down. I only had, like, 2.5 chapters left, but I'm like, oh. I'm just gonna zoom through this. His writing is described as cozy catastrophe. Honestly, all of the writing I would recommend. Nice. Well, the one book will eventually make its way. Subtitles. Subtitles? Thank you. We will definitely visit one of the books again. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing book club after the end of this year. I probably will. I'll probably try to make it a bigger thing. Although at the end of the day, it's always going to be a small thing. People don't got time to read books. I only have time to read books because I'm a NEET. And even then I have trouble reading sometimes because my ADHD can get the better of me, and I just end up being full blah 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 about it. Or I'm just like, yeah, but I could be doing this other thing. I could work on this thing, etc. But we'll see. That's future Will's problem. That's not current Will's problem. Current Will's problem is that he's not sure how to end this review. Or this book club. Which is essentially just, I like the book. 3.5. Thumbs up. Enjoyed. Would recommend, as Flossie said. Would definitely recommend this book. I had a friend who asked the other day when I mentioned that I was there anything you didn't enjoy? For the most part, Lunady, what Flossie and I have already agreed on is that the women of the village don't get a lot of attention, even though they're the ones that are experiencing some of like the worst of it. And there's just like, why didn't we get anything from them? And it's like, oh yeah, it's a late 50s book. This makes sense suddenly. And there's a part near the end where it gets very dry for a couple of pages. And it just turned into like a, get on with it. But like the actual like last 2 chapters are like, oh, I'm engaged. I want to know where this is heading. And it's not even like it's super tense. It's just like, I just want to know more. Yeah, a friend of mine was asking, just like, oh, is it scary? I've been meaning to read it, but I don't really like scary books. And I'm like, well, I'll let you know. And now I can say confidently, no. This book isn't scary at all. There's one scene that is not even scary. It's just kind of like, oh, that just happened. Holy frick. And it's obviously with the police constable. So I'll have to tell them after stream too, just like, hey, just a heads up. It's not a scary book. You can read it. It sounds tense instead of scary. Yeah, not even like, how to say, the whole time I had maybe some minor tension, but it was mostly pure intrigue. I was like, where is this going and how are they going to continue to approach the situation that is unfolding in front of them? And I think, and now I've forgotten his name. John Wyndham did good. So then I guess the book wasn't predictable. Not really. There's some parts that you can piece together where it's probably going to go. I definitely made a couple of guesses, like semi-early on. And then midway through and then near the end, I was like, oh, is this happening because of this? Is this happening because of this? Oh, and the ending happens and it was hinted at. You just wasn't quite sure if that's exactly how it was going to go. And it went. And it was good. I think that's the summary. Because sometimes you can guess what happens next. Absolutely. And like sometimes the writers give that to you, right? I mean, that's a thing in Dungeons and Dragons too, where you put your players in a position where they can guess the next part, because when they get to the part, they can feel really smart. And I think some writers occasionally give that to their readers too, because when you do that and your reader is just like, oh, I think this is going to happen, and then it does, they're just like, yeah, I'm so smart. Let's keep reading and see if I can get that dopamine burst again. And I think that's a clever thing to do in writing. Or sometimes if you can give them a twist in those situations, that's also good, because then they're just like, wow, as long as it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then it's going to cause people to be frustrated. You know, where it's just like, no, it wasn't actually, you know, Mrs. Peacock in the, in the study with the revolver. It was actually the butler, who has never been mentioned in this entire book. You know, who has never been hinted at, or you've even been made aware of them. It was them with like a rifle from, you know, from outside. And it's like, no one ever mentioned broken glass. No one ever mentioned that they were shot with a large caliber round. Nobody ever mentioned da-da-da-da. You know, like stuff like that, where you're just like, this is dumb. If you don't do that and you give a good twist, great. If you've hinted at the twist slightly and somebody takes a guess and they don't quite get it, but it, like they kind of get it, great. We appreciate it when people get a chance to try to flex their stuff and then get either outwitted or get or are right on point. Either way, normally that's a good thing to do to your readers. I say, having never written a book in my life. Anyway, I think that's the end of Book Club. I think we did it, ladies and gentlemen. We made it to the end of Book Club. Wow. One more done. Like Flossie said, 7 books done in the year. And I barely remember any of them. Flowers for... Hold on, let me see if I remember. Flowers for Algernon. Lord of the Flies. I don't even remember the next one after Lord of the Flies. I remember Lord of the Flies was the one I didn't like. Dang it. I'm going to look it up. I'm sorry. I'm being this person right now. Oh, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That was a fun book. Neuromancer, because I was on a sci-fi kick. The Hobbit. Guards. And then finally, the Midwich Cuckoos. Very good progress. Very good things. Very yay. Much hurrah. Sheep and electric mix. Yeah. Yeah, Flossie. Lord of the Rings, you didn't like it? No, I did not like... Or sorry, Lord of the Flies. I did not like Lord of the Flies. Man, that was a book to grind through. Oh. And I know that I'm just really fast. I know that the reason I didn't like it is because I was coming at it from an older age, so I've already pondered that stuff and like have a bunch of knowledge implying that the book's thesis is bullshit. You know, so you're already on the footing of knowing more than the book can give, and it's just giving you this scenario where you're just like, this wouldn't happen though. So it's already like, you know, the suspension of disbelief is gone. So from that point on, you're just trying to trudge through this book. And like, if you like the book, obviously, good. I'm glad you like the book. I didn't like the book. I would have preferred to have liked the book. My stance on all things is when people are happy that things are bad, and I'm just like, why? Why wouldn't you want it to be good? So that people can enjoy it, rather than be disappointed. That's how I felt about Lord of the Flies, where it was just like, oh, that's a shame. C'est la vie, as the children say. All right. I think that's where we're ending today, boys and girls. With the C'est la vie. No. Say Levy. Perfect. Next book, not sure yet. Lunity, I will try to figure it out within the next day or two. I think it's going to be a book that Flossie mentioned, which was a book on memory, which caught my attention as someone who has a trash memory. I'm like, that could potentially be a good thing to read, assuming that it's an interesting book to read. Flossie, if you wouldn't mind mentioning it for me, please and thank you. I don't remember what the book's name is. Oh, wait, actually, can you put it in the recommendations? Moonwalking with Einstein. That's it. That might be the next book. I'm going to give it a quick gander to see if there's an intrigue, and if it is, I might be like, yeah, this one. We could all use some help with memory. Haha. Totally not talking about myself. I wish that you would move your eyeballs. I'm going to have to figure that out after I'm done. Is currently on loan. What kind of books are you interested in? I like fantasy. I like sci-fi. I like space. I like cyberpunk. I normally like fiction, but I'm willing to expand my horizons. Because why wouldn't I? That's part of book club, right? And I still want to read Dune, but Flossie is perpetually holding a firearm at me going, no. Luna D, if you have one, would you mind putting it in the recommended tab in the book club on the Discord? Look, I'm looking. I'm looking. Yeah, Luna D, if you have one to recommend, please put it in the recommendeds. I would love to. Go for it, honestly. No, you're trying to warn me, and I'm gonna, like, start reading it and be like, Flossie, I've made a terrible mistake, and you're just like, I warned you, my child. I warned you. And I'm like, it's too late. Hey, I have to finish reading it now. Maybe we'll make it. No, we definitely can't do it then. Oh, I definitely can't do that. I was going to be like, oh, maybe we'll make that the September one. And I'm like, wait, I'm going to try to stream almost every day in September. What a terrible time to do that. Oh, I would be exhausted. Every time after stream, it'd be like, well, time to go read that fucking brick of a book. Alright, let me see. Book recommendations. Braiding Sweetgrass. You've mentioned this book before, Luna D, I believe. It becomes a read along, just a casual me being like, look everyone, I need to read this at some point, so we're gonna read it on stream. And every time we finish a chapter, we we go and play a video game. Sweet. All right. Well, I'll look into the books. We'll see which one we read this month. I'll try to get to it before the weekend. I'll try to. But I think that that's where we're going to end for the day. And thank you for the recommendations, of course, to both of you. I appreciate the recommendations. I appreciate the engagement. Oh, sweet. I already know where we're going. We're going to raid Kaju. That's nice and easy. Making the library reserve right now. Yeah, I need to go and finally just, like, break the mold. Or break the anxiety and go to that darn, I think, library near me and see if they have the book I'm looking for and be like, hi, do you guys have this book? Because that'd be really cool if you did. Yeah. But all right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today and chatting with the books and chatting about the books and talking about... I don't think Kobold's there right now, but the smooching of aliens. You heckin' weirdo. I'm getting my reps in for when I need to bully Kobold for an entire month, so. Libraries are friendly except when they charge you. We'll see. We'll see if I can do it. Thank you for taking the rec and for stream. No, you. Ha. All right, everybody. We're going to head over to Kaju because I'm like, ugh, I slept too much. It was terrible. I just kept having this weird thing where, like, in my dreams, it was just like, no, you must continue to snooze to do this thing. So I just kept snoozing for like 2 hours. I'm doing that a lot recently. I don't know what's triggering it, but it's not good. It's not good. It's not helpful. Anyway, we're gonna head over to Kaju's place. So thank you, hold on. Let me do all the thingies. There we go. There we go. There we go. So if you're a subscriber, maybe if I could write things correctly. We would have things correctly. 14 people. I think this is one of the biggest turnouts we've ever had to book club. Let's go. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. Thank you for talking with me about books. Thank you for letting me thank you for letting me do this so that I can finally start reading books again, because my God, that was a lot of years between the last time I read books and this year. And I guess thank you, Kaju, for making me think of it, because it's basically the art week, but we're doing book club instead of like art month. You know what's up. Regardless, thank you guys so much for sticking around. Whether you were chatting, whether you were lurking, whether you just popped in and out for a second, know that you were super appreciated. Hope you guys have a great day, afternoon, evening, or night, whatever time it happen to be for you. If you are subscribed, please use the top right message. If you are not subscribed, please use the bottom right message. I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves. I hope that you're drinking plenty of water. And when you finally do sleep, whatever time it happen to be for you, hope that you have a very restful sleep. I will see you guys over at Kaju's, and tomorrow I'm doing a collab with Lady Luna D at 7 p.m. EST. We're gonna be spies. You should be there. Bye-bye for now.